memes with the ladies getting drafted?
Yes. Oh my God, they're so
who
funny.
all going though?
No, the original video, the comment section is lit. It is so good. I was like, so my I love it. It's so good. And my so many words. My favorite ones that I've read so far are, my mom won't let me go because there are going to be boys there.
There's gonna be boys.
And my second favorite one is like, I use my period to get out of gym. You think I'm not going to use it to get out of the army?
My other one was like, are we going cool or comfy look? I was like, oh my God.
So like, who's all going to be there?
Who's all going to be? What's the parking situation like? They're like, I feel like it's going to be really crowded, so we should probably carpool.
Oh my God. Giving me life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Blair.
And I'm Kirsten, and we are Mediocre Content. And we are grossly in the month of November.
It is wild that we are in the month of November. Thank you to everybody that tuned in last week for our 50th episode. We appreciate you.
It's so fun.
And yeah, we're rolling right along.
And Jinx, you might hear smacking his head on Blair's mic because he's always present.
He has been our little podcast / stream buddy.
Yes.
And he loves my microphone.
He's a star.
I don't know why, but
so
he's
so funny
here living his best life. I don't know what to tell you.
I also love that you are fall vibes with your shirt today. I love the pumpkins. It's very cute. And it is still fall. The weather is finally turning where we are, and it's earlier than last year, so I'm actually hoping we might have a real winter with a little bit of snow this year.
Ooh.
Very much looking forward. We had a very wet and cold winter last year, but like zero snow, which was very disappointing. But it would be nice if it actually had, like, the leaves are finally changing early. And it's so beautiful to drive through.
Yeah.
Little New England fall vibe.
That's so good.
And if you're up in Salem, Massachusetts, you might be having some witchy fall vibes too. So
obsessed. I had a dream last night that I went to Salem, Massachusetts and like investigated and looked around, and nothing scary happened, but I really want to go there, clearly.
I saw a video just the other day because obviously at the time I was watching the video, it was pre-October. And of course, as expected, everybody wants to go to Salem in like October time. That's just the spooky vibes, right?
Yeah.
But this person was like, this is the real look. Like the lines are so crowded. It's hard to get tours. It's hard to feel like you're not just in a consumer paradise at that time. So if you are going to go, as weird as it might sound, maybe go later in the season or like right before, because if not, you're going to get caught up with every other Salem tourist there is in the world.
Yes, that is true.
Like most places.
All the witches coming back to the homeland.
It's so true. They're flocking. I wonder what you would call a group of witches. What are they called?
A coven.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Oh, right.
Oh, right. What's that term again?
It's a coven.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I knew there was one for it, but for some reason my brain said, a flock of witches.
That's
yeah.
You're thinking of birds.
But I mean, they fly, so
they do. You're right.
Anyway, we have a different kind of flying happening today in today's podcast, but before we do any of that, I say we disclaim and maybe talk about some good news.
Sure. So obviously we are not experts on anything, even the Majestic sea flaps. If you have come to the podcast to get any kind of advice, we are not the place to get that, but we are the place to learn about things that you may not already know about. And we encourage you to do your own research. And Kirsten is very passionate about the sea flaps. So you'll get a full good dose of Kirsten's Science Corner in this episode.
And not even during the good news this week.
I am going to take you into the good news. And our first good news is about pizza. And Jinx, if you would just move to the right. Thank you so much.
A
All
little
right.
to the left.
So any readers in business school should take note of this perfect example of a company understanding their customer base. Domino's has a new free pizza program for personal emergencies.
What?
What kind of emergencies? Domino's isn't referring to unintended hospital visits. Instead, try to imagine the last thing that made you decide to order pizza when you hadn't planned on doing so.
That's golden.
For example, perhaps you burned dinner, or the power went out, or maybe your in-laws just dropped by without
that's real.
telling you. That is real. Whatever your emergency situation, Domino's believes in free pizza and can make anything better. So they launched it because, with the uncertainty in everyday life, sometimes you just need pizza.
It's true.
And the way it works is you enroll in the Domino's royalty program and spend $7.99 on pizza, and then you earn an emergency pizza.
Oh,
so
that's so easy.
You have to buy pizza to get the emergency pizza. Sure. However, I think it's really easy to spend $7.99 on pizza because of how expensive pizza can be,
especially if you're getting a free one
right
after you do that. Yeah,
right. So you're earning an emergency pizza credit. You can, and then it says at the moment, Jinx, you're really making my life hard right now.
He really is.
Back and forth.
He's like, where's my free pizza?
All right. The way it works is that customers enroll. Yep, we talked about that. At the moment, the emergency pizza program is slated to run until February 11th. After a 20-teens reputation for skeezy food, Domino's launched a brand revolution that has since catapulted it to the top of the food chain in American pizza brands. They recently launched a new delivery program that allows people to get deliveries essentially anywhere within range of the store.
I have to ask you a very personal question.
Yes.
Papa John's or Domino's? Look, it's a debate, right?
It is. And I like both.
That's the problem. Yeah.
I like both. And for a while, I would tell you Papa John's.
Wow.
But like Papa John's doesn't have stores everywhere like Domino's does.
It's true.
Accessibility. So Domino's is not only more accessible, but also a solid pizza choice.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I like Papa John's. I also say that many moons ago, it would be Papa John's. But I do agree that previous to now, Papa John's felt more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was just thinking in our town, the Papa John's is on the other side of town. So the closest ones are like a local shop, which is Antonio's, which is also pretty good.
Yeah.
But if I just want some generic, like run of the mill, got to get my American pizza fix, I'm probably going to go to the Domino's.
Yeah. I mean, we have Domino's here. I haven't seen a Papa John's, but I also haven't really been looking. Fair. But the big pizza chain out here is like Mountain Mike's Pizza.
Ooh,
and it's good. Pretty good. It's like comparable to Domino's.
I feel like you have to have the right balance for pizza because there is bad pizza out there. You're so right. Do not be fooled. There is crappy pizza.
You're so right. I agree.
I love that. Good for Domino's. I'm going to do that.
Okay.
I've been in their loyalty program, but I've never seen this. So maybe it's new.
It might be new.
I wonder if you can like cash in past purchases. Do you think?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to
Should we do a live update?
I'm going to
read this story. Okay.
Yeah, you do that. I'm going to log into my loyalty.
Okay. So, this one is about, and I thought about you specifically. This one is about redheads or gingers, if you will. And for those who don't know, because you've never seen Tyler, he is a ginger.
He is.
And Kirsten has a lot of gingers in her family.
I really do.
And I think we know a lot of gingers too. So
yeah,
this is very important. So a pair of scientists have found fragments of ginger pigment molecules in fossilized frogs, which they take to mean that most famous of genetic mutations has been around a long time. University College Cork paleontologists discovered molecular evidence of pheomelanin, the pigment that produces ginger coloration, in the amphibians dating back to 10 million years. On a more serious note, the findings of their studies published in Nature Communications will enable scientists to better reconstruct the original colors of extinct organisms. The research was led by UCC's Dr. Tiffany Slater and Professor Maria McNamara, who collaborated with Swedish, Japanese, and Chinese scientists. Quote, this finding is so exciting because it puts paleontologists in a better place to detect different melanin pigments in many more fossils, says Dr. Slater. This will paint a more accurate picture of ancient animal color and will answer important questions about the evolution of colors in animals. Scientists still don't know how or why the pheomelanin evolved, but it is toxic to animals. But the fossil record might just unlock the mystery. The team performed a series of lab experiments on black ginger and white feathers to track how phenomelanin pigments degrade during the fossilization process, which backs up their interpretations of the fossil chemistry. Quote, this is a huge potential to explore the biochemical evolution of animals using the fossil record, says Dr. McNamara. In humans, red hair is specifically mentioned in peoples as far back as ancient Greece. Over time, red hair has always been pointed out as a defining feature, particularly in Northern Europe and Central Asia. While thought to be typically Celtic, red hair is not uncommonly found in Kipchaks, Azeris, Uyghurs,
yeah,
Tigers, and Mongolians, which I'm going to go ahead and assume that those are like Middle Asian tribes, potentially.
Maybe. Yeah, I can
in
look that up
fact,
too. Yeah.
in fact, some accounts put red hair and green eyes on the head of Genghis Khan himself.
Oh,
however, it's Ireland where the concentration of pheomelanin is highest in humans, where roughly 10% of the population are gingers or redheaded.
That's crazy. Also,
Yeah.
it sounds like all of those are like Turkish.
Oh, Turkish tribes. Okay.
Yeah, Central and East Asia, Turkic ethnic group. That made my mouth hurt. But anyway, that's yeah, Turkic ethnic groups.
So yeah,
that's super
anyway,
cool though.
Developments in the ginger world.
I feel like I can't escape them, and that's fine because I love it. And
yeah,
and it's so cool. Love that. Also for the Domino's update, I can search Domino's emergency pizza, but when I actually like log in, I get 0 options for it.
So it might be for a new promotion for new members.
It could be, yeah. It also could be maybe my region doesn't do that. It might be regional, or I don't have any points right now because it looks like the last time I used it, I was in Florida. So maybe I just don't have the backlog history of orders yet. I don't know. Maybe it's new orders. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But give it a go. Why not? It's free pizza after all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I guess we're gonna go swimming.
Sea flap flaps.
I don't know if you're prepared for that, but that's what we're doing. So our moose episode, which was another animal related episode, obviously, we didn't really go deep into scientific classifications or why they're classified under certain things. But I think it's important to do it here because the classification really defines what we're looking at and why they're classified that way, and like why they're called what they're called. And if you haven't guessed, it's stingrays. That's what we're talking about. I'm very passionate about them. I love them. It's one of my favorite animals in the entire world, and I freaking can't get enough of them.
She loves them so much that when we were in Virginia Beach together one time, she got a henna tattoo of a stingray, but it was also a pancake. So the stingray had a little piece of butter on top.
And it's perfect. And honestly, I have 3 stuffed animals of different kinds of stingrays as well. And if you didn't know those exist, you obviously haven't been to Ripley's Aquarium and you've just been called out, and you should 100% do that. Highly recommend the
I feel
experience.
like most places or most aquariums have like a touch tank where there's little
so
either stingrays or like skates, I think is what they're called. Yeah.
And that distinction is very important. And another reason why we're going to talk about the classification. These fish have been, in general, on the planet since the Jurassic days. They're a very old lineage. Their kingdom is Animalia for obvious reasons. They're an animal. Their phylum is Chordata. Their class is Chondrichthyes, which is very important, and we'll talk about it later as well. They also have a subclass, which I'm going to butcher, Alismobrachi, I believe.
I like it.
And then they have two distinct orders. And Blair, I have posted a picture in our little cheat sheet because I feel like visually this makes sense. Obviously, all of our links are always in our description, so I encourage you guys to look at the links that we have because the differences in these two orders have to do with visual pieces of what you're looking at on a stingray. So there is rajiforms and mylobatiforms. And depending on the type of stingray, the body shape and structure will distinguish which one they fall under. Among the differences we find between both orders, we highlight the myliobatiforms that have pelvic fins formed by a single lobe, while rajiforms are usually bilobulated, which is a mouthful, and bi just means two. So it looks like there's like two little indents on them instead of just one fully formed pelvic lobe, or pelvic fins by a lobe. The tail of the myelobatiforms is usually relatively thin and elongated. It usually does have a spine in a dorsal position and positioned in the first third of the tail. Also, they generally lack a dorsal fin, and in species that do have one, it is usually unique and located closer to the base of the tail rather than at the end of it. And finally, myelobatiforms lack spines on their midline of their tail, which is present in rajiforms. So, again, just visual differences. They're still considered stingrays. They're just in two different orders depending on those structural pieces.
Got it.
Their family name is also hard to say for me. The Satidae. So as you will. And then of course their common name is stingray or cartilaginous fish. And that just means the majority of their body is cartilage. Yes. A characteristic that is also found in other animal creatures in the sea that we will talk about. So basic characteristics of a stingray, they are enlarged and flat pectoral fins continuously on the sides of their head, so you can't really say when it ends and when it begins. There's no caudal fin, eyes on the dorsal surface, so at the top of, like on top of them.
Right.
And they're narrow, long, and whip-like tail, typically with one or more venomous spines. So it's not just that one barb necessarily, they can have multiple. The Chondrichthyes class is quite vast because sharks and skates, which are separate, are also under this class.
Okay.
And if you don't know a lot about skate, I hate to tell you this. I learned this a really long time ago and it really messed me up. So I'm going to impart it onto you. If any of you guys eat calamari, which is usually made of squid, or one would assume it is made of squid, sometimes squid can either be really expensive or hard to get in large quantities, enough for the people who do eat them to be able to get them.
Right.
And so what I learned horribly is that skate will sometimes be used because it has a similar texture, a similar cooking time. You can't really tell the difference taste-wise what the difference is. So unfortunately, another animal is being marketed at this, but this also means that when you pay for calamari, you may actually be eating skate instead, but paying the same price. So I just want to put that out there.
Wow.
I don't eat calamari. I'm not really a huge seafood person, but even if I was, it just makes me feel really bad about it. So I wouldn't be eating that.
Fair.
Yeah. Members of the Chondrichthyes are characterized by skeletons made of rubbery cartilage, like your ears, for example. They have cartilage in your ears. Rather than weirdos, but the cartilage is structural, kind of like your bones. They're just made differently, obviously, in your body, but they do provide structure and support for your body. This is just what they're made out of. And this is different, obviously, than bony fish. because they're bony instead of cartilaginous.
Thank you for clearing that up. We
You're
appreciate that.
very welcome. This class also has jaws, pairs of fins, paired nostrils, scales, and two-chambered hearts. And the two subclasses are recognized as Alice Mobrachii, sharks, rays, and skates, and holocephali, chimera, sometimes called ghost sharks. So if you want to look that up, feel free to do so. I'm not doing that here. In stingrays, as with all rays, in the traditional order Ragiformes, the anterior edge of the pectoral fin, which is greatly enlarged, is attached to the head anterior to the gill openings. They also have what's called ventral gill openings, and the eyes and spiracles are on the dorsal surface, so again, on the top. In addition, they lack an anal fin and lack a nictitating membrane with the cornea attached directly to the skin around the eyes as opposed to being separate. In members of this family, the disc, which is just the outer part of a stingray,
yeah,
is less than 1.3 times as broad as it is long. They also lack that caudal fin, and like we talked about, they have a really long tail with the distance from the cloaca, which is its reproductive system, to the tip much longer than the breadth of the disc. And if you don't know sizing and shapes, that's fine. It was hard for me to read and conceptualize it well. Just look at a picture. Stingrays are common in tropical coastal waters throughout the world, and there are even freshwater species in Asia, Africa, Florida, for example. Reports that there are several reports that tropical species are known only from freshwater, and some marine species are found in brackish and freshwater on occasion. So it just kind of depends. They live everywhere.
Sure.
Some adult rays may be no longer than a human palm, which is adorable, while other species, like the short-tailed stingray, may have a body of 6 feet in diameter, which is insane, and an overall length, including their tail, of 14 feet, which is also pretty big. Stingrays can vary from gray, red, plain, patterned, spotted. There's lots to look at, and lots of different shapes and sizes of their fins, their face, etc. And of course, the reason they're called majestic sea flaps is some of the large pectoral fins can also be mistaken for, quote, wings. So they're kind of gliding through the ocean. That's how they move. Unlike just a propeller as a tail for most bony fish, they're using their, quote, wings or pectoral fins.
Manta rays are in this particular category, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Just making sure.
We're going to talk about them.
Oh, good.
Because I love them.
They're amazing, and they're very big.
And the pictures that you see of like a diver next to one, insanity.
I know.
If you actually, let me retract for a moment. If you have that fear of like massive objects next to like human objects / deep ocean issues, don't look that up.
I forget what that's called, but like people who are afraid of whales or something like that because they're so much bigger than us.
Yeah, it's not great, but we don't think about that.
No.
What we are going to think about is a stingray's stinger, because that is another reason it's called a stingray. Most of them have a razor-sharp barb or serrated cartilaginous spine, which grows from the ray's whip-like tail, similar to a fingernail. So you have a nail that grows from your finger.
Yeah.
A barb is similar to that on the tail of a stingray, and can grow as long as 37 centimeters, which is about 14-ish inches, which is really large for some. On the underside of the spine, there are 2 grooves containing venom-secreting glandular tissues, and the entire spine is covered with a thin layer of skin called the integumentary sheath, in which the venom is concentrated. I definitely botched it, but it's a lot.
This integumentary sheath.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The venom contains the enzymes 5-nucleotidase and phosphodiesterase, which is a lot of in my mouth. And these break down and kill cells. So fun. There's also a neurotransmitter, serotonin, which provokes smooth muscle contractions. So don't get poked by one.
RIP. What is the
Are you
Why? I'm
Steve
blanking.
Irwin?
Steve Irwin. I knew it was Steve, but then I forgot the last name and I was
Steve.
like, oh no, it's
Yeah,
not
but
Steve Jobs. That's for sure.
it is not Steve Jobs. Nope, he was not the crocodile hunter.
No. Although it would be really funny if he was anyway.
That would be like a satire on the
Oh yeah.
crocodile hunter. But this venomous spine does give them their common name, of course, and the name can also be used to refer to any kind of poisonous ray with this type of characteristic. They can also be called whiptails, which is less common because they have a long tail and it whips around.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you got common names. And then a group or a collection of stingrays is usually referred to as a fever, which is fun. Like most animals, stingrays got to be eaten. So the question is, what do they eat? It's a great question. Thanks for asking. So stingrays feed primarily on mollusks, crustaceans, and occasionally small fish, depending on what type of ray it is and what access they have to certain foods. The flattened bodies of stingrays allow them to conceal themselves in the sand, which is great camouflage. Smell and electroreceptors are used to locate the prey, and that's similar to sharks. If you're unaware, they have a similar characteristic for finding prey. And some stingrays' mouths contain two powerful shell-crushing plates, while some species only have sucking mouth parts where they can just pull it in, and that's about it. Just pull it in and eat it whole. Rays settle at the bottom, of course, then while feeding, and sometimes leave only their eyes and tail visible because they have to be able to see their prey probably as well. Probably a little helpful. And then coral reefs are favored, of course, because they're usually shared with sharks and other things during high tide. But that's also where the most amount of other aquatic animals will also be present in large quantities because it's a coral reef, it's a habitat, it's where they live and thrive.
Right. Got it.
Stingrays generally do not attack aggressively or even defend themselves in most cases. So when threatened, their primary reaction is to swim away, which it makes sense. However, when attacked by predators or stepped on, so be careful, their barb, which is their stinger, is whipped upwards, which is why they're called the whipping tail. And this attack is normally ineffective against their main predator, which is sharks, but if you step on one, it will be quite effective.
Yes, it will.
The breaking of the stinger in defense is non-fatal, so if they happen to use it and it gets broken off, it can actually regrow, similar to a lizard tail or something of that nature. Because again, it's kind of like a nail, like your fingernail, it just grows whenever. Depending on the size of the stingray, humans are sometimes stung on the foot, obviously. Surfers or those who enter waves with large populations have learned to slide their feet through the sand rather than stepping. Because if they're buried, if you put your foot under the stingray, their barb isn't there, that's their mouth. So you just stuck your whole foot in their mouth, which is very rude, but also prevents you.
New slippers.
My ray slippers. It's very rude, but it will protect you from getting stung. Can you imagine you're just chilling on the bottom of the ocean and suddenly you're just a mouthful of somebody's foot? Oh my God. So don't do that. You know what? Don't be stepping around where the rays are. They're just minding their business.
That's right.
And of course, stamping hard on the bottom of the murky water will probably cause them to swim away if you don't step on them first.
Right.
Of course, if you're going to harass a stingray, they can be known to sting elsewhere, and some have led to fatalities due to stupidity, so don't be doing that either. Contact with the stinger does cause local trauma from the cut itself, of course, and then pain and swelling then from the venom because you've just been impaled.
Correct.
Just, for lack of a better word. And
Thanks.
then if you leave it for long periods of time without treatment, bacteria from infection, because you are in the ocean, this is a foreign object in your body, and your body's like, what the heck? Correct. Immediate injuries to human include, but are not limited to, poisoning, puncture, severed arteries, and possibly unalived. So, whatever. but they're very rare to have a fatal sting. On September 4, 2006, as we know, Australian wildlife expert and television personality Steve Irwin was pierced specifically in the chest by a stingray barb while snorkeling in Australia, and unfortunately did pass because of this. It's a very
I didn't
rare.
know it was in his chest, which makes a
Yes.
lot more sense now.
Right. He was not sticking his foot in the stingray's mouth. He was swimming around them, and from what I understand, it kind of got spooked, and it was a very freak accident thing.
Yeah.
Obvious. It's very sad.
Well, in animals, you never know what they're gonna do, so that's just one of those things, right?
And that's the thing too. Be aware, these are wild animals. So even if you do go to the touch tanks and things, if you're swimming out in the ocean, this isn't like Fred from the aquarium. This is like Steve, no pun intended, who's about to barb you. So like just be careful. Treatment, however, includes application of near scalding water, which helps ease the pains by denaturing the complex of a venom protein, because the way that you can break a protein down is by heating it up excruciatingly high so it breaks itself apart. That's just science. And then, of course, antibiotics to prevent bacterial infection. Immediate injection of local anesthetic and around the wound could also be very helpful, and any warm to hot fluid, including urine, may also prove some relief. And I know that they say this about jellyfish stings too. I would not recommend that. I would just seek help
for jellyfish stings.
Right. So just go to the hospital. Is what I would suggest to you.
Urgent care would love to see you.
And they even say in this write-up that urine is also a folk remedy for jellyfish stings and alike. Sure. However, you can use vinegar if you get stung by a jellyfish. I've heard this article says it as well, but vinegar may help. Or just seek immediate medical attention would also be a good shout.
Yeah.
The pain would normally last up to 48 hours, but is most severe, of course, in the first 30 to 60 minutes. Could be accompanied by nausea, fatigue, headaches, fever, chills, etc., because you got venom in your foot. And then all stingray injuries should be, of course, medically assessed. I'm obsessed. Assessed. And that's just go see the doctor if you happen to get stung, or just stick your foot in its mouth and it'll be fine. The final thing,
literally.
Don't actually do that. That's not real advice. The final thing I want to talk about before we go into our ad segment is stingray love. So their mating season is actually in the winter, which is kind of interesting. The males do court the females, but he will closely follow her, biting at her pectoral discs like nom nom nom, and then
her flat flaps.
Her flat flaps, which sounds very creepy when you say it like that.
I know.
Can I nibble on your flat flaps? I guess we should edit that out, maybe. I don't know. We'll think about it.
Too graphic for this pod.
I'm gonna say that to Tyler later. Anyway, during mating, the male will go on top of the female, so his belly on her back, and put two of his little claspies into her vents. And most rays are ovoviviparous. Ovoviviparous, bearing live young in litters of 5 to 10, which is a lot of babies. The female holds the embryos in her womb without a placenta. And instead, the embryos absorb nutrients from a yolk sac, and after that sac is depleted, the mother will provide uterine milk. Yeah. And apparently, stingrays also have milk. So, fun facts with Kirsten and Blair. Anyway.
I'm still getting over the two claspers in her vent.
Get your claspers out of my vent! Stop nibbling on my pectoral disc! Gosh, to be a stingray in this age.
No.
No. And with that, I'm going to send us into a break.
Okay, bye.
Hey man, did you hear Mediocre Content Podcast has more social platforms now?
Whoa, no way. What do they need those for? I thought they barely had an email.
Not sure, but they gotta be Delulu if they think that many people are trying to find them.
Exactly. Well, I guess we should play into their delusion then. Here are the ways you can contact the NCP host, if you really want to.
Connect with NCP on Gmail, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you want to listen to podcasts.
Or you can find all of their contacts by visiting Linktree/Mediocre Content Podcast.
Now, good luck in the second half of the pod. You'll need it.
Welcome back. I hope you have chilled out from the end of the first section at this point.
It was getting way too hot and steamy.
Stingray love. So now we're going to talk a little bit about humans and stingrays together in the world that we live in, as well as some specific stingrays that I decided I would call out. And we'll talk about why I decided to call out a few of them instead of all of them later. So, obviously, like any other animal that we have on the planet, ocean or terrestrial or otherwise, stingrays play an ecological role in their aquatic food chain, and they offer a number of values to humans, of course, whether it's food, products, or tourism. And although edible, they're not usually a dietary staple. They're also not considered a high quality food. However, I will go back to the skate situation. You may not know it. It's not officially a stingray necessarily, but just so you know, you may be eating skate when you have calamari. They can be consumed, however, of course, including fresh, dried, or salted, and recipes throughout the world will dry their wings as forms of food. Singapore and Malaysia specifically are commonly barbecuing stingrays over charcoal, and they're served with what's called spicy sambal sauce, and are generally a prized part. The wings or the cheek and the liver will be cooked in general, which really makes me sad. But you have to understand too that the reason they're not highly desirable in general is because they are mostly cartilage, and it's kind of a rubbery texture. It can be hard to cook with anyway. Not all stingrays are created equal, of course, in their composition, which we've already talked about. So depending on the type, that may also kind of prevent you from wanting to eat them. It's not something I would recommend, to be honest. It's rude.
Do what you want to do.
Yeah, do what you want to do. I'm not going to be eating them. We're already sticking our feet in their mouth, and it just seems like rude in general. So, the skin of a stingray is rough, and so in some places this can also be used as a leather, similar to if you were to use, cows, unfortunately.
Sure, yeah.
But it's the same situation. The skin is used as an underlayer for the cord or leather wrap on Japanese swords or katanas. Due to its hard and rough texture, it keeps the braid wrap from sliding on the handle, of course, during use. Native American Indians used to use the spines, bless you.
Thank you.
Of stingrays for arrowheads, while groups in the Indo-West Pacific used them as war clubs, so weapons. Stingrays are popular targets of ecotourism, though, as well, because they're not normally visible to swimmers in most cases. However, divers and snorkelers may be able to find them in shallow, sandy waters, of course, again, because they're camouflaging themselves. And they're usually very docile. Their normal reaction, like we said, is to kind of run away if they feel like they're under attack or disturbed. However, certain larger species may be more aggressive and should be approached by caution or with caution, because again, they have the barb, so be careful. In the Cayman Islands specifically, there are several dive sites called Stingray City, Grand Cayman, where divers and snorkelers can swim with large southern rays and feed them by hand, which I'm sure is so fun.
Wow.
There's also a Stingray City in the sea surrounding the Caribbean island of Antigua, and it consists of a large shallow reserve where the rays live, and snorkeling is, of course, possible. In Belize, off the island of Ambergris Cay,
Okay.
where there is a popular marine sanctuary called Hol Chan, where divers and snorkelers often gather to watch stingrays and nurse sharks that are drawn to the area by tour operators who then, of course, feed the animals. That's why they're there. I would be there if there was food. Absolutely. Many Tahitian island resorts regularly offer guests the chance to feed the stingrays and sharks, so they're probably together. Keep that in mind. If you're afraid of sharks, be careful. This consists of taking a boat to the outer lagoon reefs, then standing in waist-high water while habituated, why is my mouth doing this thing? Habituated stingrays swarm around, pressing right up against a person seeking food. So they're very used to humans. They get fed by hand there all the time, so they'll probably swim right up to you and use their mouth, I guess, on your hand or your skin. The videos of some of those is like the lady with the stingray that's like on her back, just like laughing.
Oh my
Because
God.
he's very confused about which side the food is coming from. And it's a very cute video. If you could find it, highly recommend. It made me laugh. And while, of course, stingrays are relatively widespread and unlikely to be threatened, there are several species where the conservation status is more problematic, leaving them to be listed as vulnerable or endangered by the IUCN. The status of several other species are poorly known, leading them to be listed as data deficient. So, and you'll see there are about 70 species of stingrays. So there's no way, and I feel like we've talked about this before, but the ocean in general is vastly underrated for the number of animals and the number of systems that are down there. We just don't have the knowledge as readily available as we do for terrestrial, because we can't breathe underwater as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
So there's probably more, and the ones that we even know about, we just don't know a great deal about, especially if they are hovering in that deeper to open ocean range.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't go into all 70, and there isn't even enough information on all 70 to discuss, but what I would like to discuss is my top 4.
Top 4.
Top 4. Because, like, I have to have a top 4 if I'm this enthused about them.
I agree.
So the first one I'm going to talk about is called the cow-nose ray, or Rhinoptera bonacis, which is very fun to say. Probably the cutest of all the rays, in my opinion, and that's aside from the ones that fit in your palm, to be fair. I'm sure those are adorable. But they have 2 round humps as their nose and are usually a sandy tan color.
They're so cute.
They're so cute. And these ones you can actually find in fevers, which is, again, they're just group name, like coven, but
Yeah.
stingray. I know we talked about coven. I know we were trying to figure out the witch scenario, so yeah, they're a coven now.
Kevin.
But at Virginia Beach, weirdly enough, you can find them. So they have that really fast boat. For context, Blair and I both grew up in Virginia. She closer to the Norfolk side and Virginia Beach side than I did, but we vacationed there every year, and we would ride the Rudy Rocket at Virginia Beach, which is that really big yellow fast boat that people can go on and pay a bunch of money just to get sprayed in the face by seawater. And when we were doing that, we saw cow nose fevers as we were going. So you can find them, and that's coastal. It's not like open ocean. So you can find them. But they are most common in tropical to temperate latitudes in the Western Atlantic Ocean, and can, of course, be seen in shallow coastal waters like we did. And they are considered an eagle ray, and this is because of their fin shape. They are also active swimmers, rarely found lying motionless on the seafloor, unlike their whiptail stingray companions that like to bury themselves. This one's just constantly swimming. This species is a foraging predator that specializes on shelled invertebrate prey, including clams, snails, lobsters, oysters, and crabs. Once a cow nose detects their prey, they flap their pectoral fins, majestic sea flap flap, while also sucking on sediment, and Jinx is deciding I'm done with that. Now that he's moving the entire page.
Look, scroll up. He's like he's typing.
Jinx, I don't know what your bum wants to type, but I'm trying to talk about sea flap flaps right now. That's hilarious. As I'm reading, it just keeps going down and down and down.
If you scroll up, you'll see his paragraph of G's.
Those are the best G's I've ever seen typed. But basically, once they detect their prey, They'll flap their fins, suck up the sediment with their mouths, and out their gill slits to filter out anything that's gross. And eventually they will draw the prey into their mouth and use their strong jaws and thick crushing tooth plates to break open the shell. Cow nose do have poisonous stingers, of course. However, since they're super shy and they're genuinely just kind of swimming around on the surface, they pose very minimal risk to humans by stepping on their spine. They're also not burying themselves. They're just sucking up predator food.
Got it.
Yep. They're very cute, though. If you are looking for a gateway stingray, that is the one I would recommend.
I agree.
The southern stingray, or Daciatus americana, are also extremely common in the Atlantic, and like the cow nose, they too prefer tropical temperate latitudes in the western Atlantic Ocean. However, these are different because instead of swimming actively all the time, these are the ones that do prefer to lay low on the ocean floor, and they can also get gigantic. This is the one where it's like a freaking monster that can't even fit in a normal fishing, like commercial fishing net. These things get huge.
Awesome.
A moderately sized whiptail stingray spends most of its time in contact with the sea floor, of course, burying itself with only its large eyes uncovered. Its mouth is on the ventral or bottom side of its head, and it uses an electric sense, of course, to locate a variety of invertebrate fish prey.
Frisch.
Wow. Fish prey.
Shavakadu.
Free shavakadu. Its preferred prey includes shrimps, crabs, and other crustaceans and small fish. I'm sure most of you know this, but like most fish, most of them obtain oxygen through their gill system when they suck in water. However, this poses an issue for stingrays that bury themselves because their mouth and their gills are on the bottom. And if they're burying themselves, their mouth is now suffocated with sand, which is
cute.
Is a problem. So you got to have a solution for that. And the way that they do this is they pump water through specialized openings called spiracles that are located at the top of their heads, so out of the sand, of course. They're located just behind the eyes and are easily noticeable in photographs. So if you do see one from the top down, you can usually identify the spiracles behind their eyes. And this helps them breathe, so pull in the oxygen from the water and not suffocate in the sand.
I like that for them. That's
huge.
Good. It's a big deal.
Yeah. However, their largest predator is actually hammerhead sharks, and it's just in general, there's the scalloped as well as great hammerheads. Either one will 100% try and eat one of these things.
Great.
So, which I would argue hammerhead sharks would kind of go for anything. They're pretty aggressive sharks out of the shark family, so
that's true.
This does not surprise me. Okay, so we're going on maybe to your favorite. Giant manta rays.
It gives Moana.
It does give Moana, and that is another reason I love that movie. Don't you get me copyright striked. We're trying to be poor.
Okay. All right.
Mobula barostris. The manta ray can be found worldwide. However, their preferred environment is tropical to warm temperate latitudes in the open ocean, because they're huge. So if you found, I don't think you'd find one just hanging out in the coastal regions because they're just this massive animal. And they are very unique because instead of picking up crustaceans on the sea floor, they're actually filter feeders, and instead will filter the seawater through their mouth and gill system and eat tiny little planktons that are in the ocean.
So if you go to the Georgia Aquarium, there is a giant, I think there's 2 giant manta rays in a large tank with a whale shark.
Adorable. And they do the same thing, is the thing.
Yep.
They're filter feeders.
Right.
So they're not going to be eating each other anytime soon, which is huge also. I need to go to that aquarium. That's on my to-do list.
It's truly the best. Honestly, like if we ever come and visit,
yes, we'll
do it because, or if we're visiting like Chris's parents, we'll do it because then,
Yeah.
Anyway,
We need
not
to.
us making plans on the pod. Sorry about that.
Hey, this happens. This is our pod. We do what we want.
That's right.
They do constantly then swim with their mouths open, which is kind of funny to me. They're just constantly. I know. Just great. To aid in this strategy, giant mantas also have specialized flaps known as cephalic lobes, which may help direct more water and food into their mouths. And if you see a picture of a manta ray, you will notice these around their mouths. They look like little baby flaps.
They look like little antennas, honestly.
Yes. And it's just helping siphon that water straight into their mouth hole. And that's great. They are the largest ray and one of the largest fishes in the world, though not the largest in total, obviously, because we just talked about, the whale shark, for example, which is also very big. Humpback whales are also very big, and the blue whale is massive.
Humpback whale.
Humpback whales. Sorry, I opened that can. Sorry.
I love whales. Maybe I'll do another one on the whales because whales are my favorite.
So you do, and we'll have to do one on sharks at this point because we've talked enough about them intermittently.
You're so right.
We're going back to the ocean, everyone.
Oh, God.
But they do reach widths up to 29 feet or 8.8 meters, and they are much longer or larger than any other ray species out there. And for decades, there was only one known species of manta, but there are now 2 divided species of manta rays, which is so cool. The giant, of course, which is the one we're currently talking about, which is more an oceanic species. But there's also the reef manta ray, which is more coastal in nature, ironically. The giant mantas have one of the lowest fecundity of the elasmobranchs, typically only giving birth to 1 pup every 2 to 3 years, instead of like the southern ray or the cow nose where they have like 5 to 10.
Yeah.
These guys have like 1 sometimes.
That's a huge risk to their population too, which is a problem.
It really is. And due to their broad range and sparse distribution across the world's ocean, there's of course still gaps in the knowledge of their total life history. But there are reports of giant mantas living to even 40 years old.
Wow.
I know. But of course, growth, development, there's still a lot of research to do. We don't know a whole lot, but they are super cool. And if you've never seen a photo, highly recommend a little Google search. They are fantastic. The final one is probably outside of the manta. I would say this is the other most known one because of Finding Nemo. This is the spotted eagle ray.
Yeah. So this is the teacher in Finding Nemo. I love that.
Exactly. So I wanted to make sure to include him because I do think he's one of the most well-known ones because of that. But he is also a favorite. So the Adabatus nari, which I love to say, is similar to the manta ray. The spotted eagle ray can be found worldwide as well in tropical and warm temperate latitudes. And for this ray, of course, as we talked about, he is the teacher from Finding Nemo. These guys can reach widths of nearly 11 feet or 3 meters. And it's also another one of the larger rays that there are, with mantas being the ones that grow the biggest, of course, like we just talked about. But the spotted eagle rays, like most eagle rays, are active swimmers. So this is similar to the cow nose because they're just constantly going. And unlike that of the southern ones, they are not just lying motionless on the seafloor. They are foraging predators and are also known for eating a variety of invertebrate and fish prey. They do also have that plate-like crushing structure inside of their mouth so they can crush clams, oysters, and alike. And just like the name implies, they are covered in spots and other markings, making them essentially unmistakable for any of the other species. So if you see this one, you pretty much know exactly what it is. The spotted eagle rays do live along the open coast and warm waters throughout the world and are most likely being associated with the coral reefs and sometimes enter protected bays to feed or to mate. And fun fact, they can leap out of water very aggressively, and the cow nose actually do this as well. And if you do look up Majestic sea flat flaps, the video is of cow nose fevers leaping out of the water.
So I have two things. First
Yes.
thing is, that the Disney Pixar people did their research based on that information that you just provided to us,
Very
which I
true.
appreciate.
Yes.
Also, I have been on Virginia Beach and I have seen the cow nose
fun.
stingrays like leaping out of the water, and it's so funny because you're like, oh my god, what was that?
Very weird. You cannot fly in the sky. You must be in the water. They tried to
I
escape.
can fly twice as high.
They really can. So it's very fun to see. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to see these rays or other different types of rays, a lot of aquariums do have them, and a lot of them also have them in their touch tanks. And in some cases, if you go to Ripley's or maybe the Georgia Aquarium too, I'm not sure what they offer, but some of them do also offer you to swim and feed them like in the tank. They'll like set you up with the right scuba gear and stuff, and you can swim in the tank with them. Keep in mind, these stingrays do have their barbs clipped down. So kind of like your fingernail, they get rid of the barb completely so that when you're swimming with them, they aren't able to just stab you mercilessly in the chest.
You're not going to die. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But also keep in mind that they don't, some people may have a problem with that because you're like, well, that's their self-defense mechanism. You're harming the animal. You're taking away their only defense. I would also like to say that the majority of them are in captivity and do not require a barb because they're not fending off real predators in the ocean or like being concerned about that. They are in a very controlled environment, and I'm not one to say exactly, but it's okay. It's okay that they don't have it. They don't require it in that environment. But they are super fun to be around. They're super relaxing to watch swim, and they feel like the most exquisite velvet in the world. And I love it. Highly recommend. That's my spiel.
They are very soft. I will give them that.
They are so soft and mostly docile.
Yeah.
So it's very fun. And that's stingrays. So I guess out of this episode, realistically, what we've decided is we need to do whales and sharks, which is great for topic ideas for next year, which is coming very fast.
Yes, indeed.
Any other comments on stingray?
I don't think so. I think you did a great job.
Thanks.
I think that, stingrays are a little bit underrated, I feel.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because most people are about the big fish.
True.
But they have, stingrays are big fish too, technically, but they just don't look like fish.
That's fair. And there are 70 types of them that are currently known. So they're also very vast. And you've probably inadvertently been nearby one at some point if you were in the water and just didn't know.
Yeah.
So don't stick your foot in their mouth. Don't stomp on them rudely. And you'll be fine.
Exactly. Usually they'll know you're coming too.
Yes.
That's the other thing. Like they're not stupid.
Well, yeah, because they got like that whole like vibration and electrical current situation. Yeah.
Right.
Smarts.
So, anyway, that's going to wrap up this episode. Feel free to send us an email with any questions, comments, concerns, or episode topic suggestions at mediocrecontentpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram or TikTok at Mediocre Content Podcast, or catch up with us every other Thursday on Twitch at Mediocre Content Podcast at 3 p.m. PST, 6 p.m. EST, or 11 p.m. BST for the Twitch stream. Don't forget to rate us 5 stars anywhere you listen to podcasts. We all know from last week's episode that you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, apparently. So I'm gonna, promote that one now. And we will see you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.